Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Now, the second coming of the Scorpions is one step closer to reality after Cabinet approved the National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Bill last week. In October last year, when President Cyril Ramaphosa tabled his implementation plan in response to the Zondo Commission report, he announced that the National Prosecuting Authority's Investigating Directorate would be made a permanent body with powers similar to those of the disbanded Scorpions. About 10 months later, the bill to effect this was approved by the Cabinet at its meeting last week. Now, joining us now to discuss this is the DA Shadow Minister of Justice, Advocate Glynnis Breytenbach. Advocate Breytenbach, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Good evening to you and to everyone who's watching.
Advocate, let's start off, of course, with this amendment, right? So, a lot of people, a lot of citizens who want to see justice being prevailed in this country want to see the return of the Scorpions. My question is, will it still have the same effect the Scorpions had in the late 90s and the 2000s? Should, of course, it be implemented now?
Well, it's a difficult question. Of course, we all want some sort of body to deal with corruption, to deal with organized crime, the two things that are really destroying this country. And so any step in that direction is a step in the right direction. So making the independent directorate, setting it up was not a bad idea. Looking at making some sort of permanent structure is not a bad idea, but making the independent directorate a permanent part of the National Prosecuting Authority is not the same as bringing the Scorpions back. There's a variety of reasons for that. The first is that the skills that were available to the Scorpions in the late 1990s and the early 2000s prior to it being disbanded are no longer there. They don't exist. The NPA does not have those skills anymore. Those people have either left, moved on to other jobs, or retired. You know, it's a long time ago. So the skills that populated the Scorpions now no longer exist. And the ID does not have access to that that amount of skill that the Scorpions had. The Scorpions were populated by experienced and specialist prosecutors who worked in conjunction with experienced investigators from the South African police, and they were housed in one building. And so it was prosecutor-guided investigations. The police reported up a reporting line to a police structure. The prosecutors reported up a reporting line to the prosecuting structure, and they had other skills in that unit. They had accounting skills, they had forensic skills, they had cyber forensic skills, they had financial forensic skills. All of those skills were available then, which now does not exist. The independent director has taken over some of the skills of the Zondo Commission, but it's insufficient. But the biggest problem is this. The Scorpions were a very effective anti-corruption unit. And so they went after Jacob Zuma, they went after Jackie Selebi, and they went after a whole lot of politicians in Parliament in the Travelgate scandal. And for their trouble, they were disbanded. The governing party did not like having a unit that could go after them. And so after the Travelgate scandal, the Scorpions, the move to disband the Scorpions began, and it was very easy to do. It requires a simple majority in Parliament. So to make the independent directorate a permanent structure within the NPA just means that as soon as they don't like it anymore, they can get rid of it very easily by a simple majority in Parliament. After the disbanding of the Scorpions, Mr. Glynnis took the matter to the courts, and he ended up in the Constitutional Court where he won. And the Constitutional Court set out a series of requirements for an independent investigative body to deal with corruption and organized crime. And it's referred to colloquially as the STIRS requirements, but the most important requirement is independence. Independence, apart from being in the NPA, outside of the National Prosecuting Authority, an independent body, preferably a Chapter 9, so that in order to get rid of it, you would have to get a 75% majority vote in Parliament, which is very unlikely to happen. So to set up another structure within the NPA, which can be gotten rid of as soon as you don't like it anymore, is not the answer. And the minister is pretending to be serious about going after corruption and organized crime by doing this, when in fact, we all know that is no guarantee, because they can get rid of it tomorrow if they so choose. We have proposed a different solution to the problem. We've proposed an anti-corruption commission. We have a bill drafted that's about to also come to Parliament, which sets up a structure outside of the National Prosecuting Authority, in consultation with the National Prosecuting Authority, of course, but outside of the NPA, independent, a Chapter 9 institution that cannot be gotten rid of at a whim. And that is the answer to the problem.
Advocate, that's why I wanted to come in, because it's one thing having it as a permanent body. What are the chances of it being an independent body? And when I say independent, and I think both you and I will agree on this, independent from political influence. Is there a chance that's going to happen, given the history of so much of political influence that happens within the NPA and so many other bodies which could hold politicians to account?
You know, we saw with the ease with which the ANC hollowed out the National Prosecuting Authority, the South African Police Service, the Revenue Services, the Financial Intelligence Center, even the investigative capacity at the Reserve Bank. All of those investigative bodies were hollowed out because there was to be no accountability for corruption and organized crime. It was easy to do it once. It will be easy to do it again. No amount of lip service will change that. And if the government really wants to be serious about going after corruption, really wants to be serious about going after organized crime, really wants to be serious about bringing down the crime rate in this country, then they won't try and fool us with a dummy bill that allows them to do as they please, and that is vulnerable, very vulnerable to political interference. If they're serious, they must put their money where their mouth is, and set up an independent body that's a Chapter 9 institution that cannot be undone when it no longer is convenient.
Advocate, we've seen obviously with the recommendations of the Zondo report that not much has been really done. It's been, if not a slow process, no process at all. Now, of course, you have experience being part of the NPA and during that time when, of course, the Scorpions were around. How much does South Africa now need this? Because so many of us would like to see accountability and prosecutions for those, especially during the state capture era. Realistically speaking, is there still a possibility this happens, and it happens in a way where it is free from any influence that can be given to it?
Look, I would like to think that the National Prosecuting Authority at the moment is operating as independently as it can. Again, there's a serious lack of skills in the NPA at the moment. There's a very serious lack of skills in the police at the moment. And both of those departments suffer from very serious financial constraints. And if you want to prosecute complex commercial crime, you need money. Forensic reports are expensive to come by. They are not skills that the NPA or the police have in-house. They have to tender for them. They have to pay vast amounts of money for those, and it takes a lot of time. So state capture prosecutions are going to take a little longer because they're very complex to prepare for court. And we saw what happened in the Free State matter, where the preparation was lacking. The matter was all but thrown out. So these things do take time, and I understand that probably better than most. But I also think that they've had enough time, and that we need to start seeing some action. The time is running out for saying we need more time. They've had enough time now. The information that's out there has been available for 4 and 5 and 6 years, and that is a long time with which to prepare a prosecution. So I'm disappointed that we're not seeing prosecutions now, and that that there's no real action from the prosecuting authority on state capture matters and other matters. Of course, one must never forget that they have many other matters to do. The everyday cases that keep the wheels of justice turning. There's not only state capture, there's not only organized crime, and they are having successes with some of those matters. On a daily basis, you can see in the papers that people are being convicted, people are being sentenced to imprisonment, but for smaller issues. South Africans are entitled and quite right to be hungry for consequences for antisocial behavior. And the National Prosecuting Authority really does need to come to the party now and produce some big and successful prosecutions.
Advocate Breytenbach, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live. Advocate, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, it's a great pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
It's Advocate Glynnis Breytenbach, the DA Shadow of Justice. We wait to see what happens with regards to this. A lot of questions, whether it can still have the same sting the Scorpions had, but of course, so many mitigating factors, funding being among them, and of course, whether there will be outside influence with regards to serving justice for those who need it. After the break, I'll have your news. Do stay tuned.